there is no voice and face of menopause. It is something that affects all of us. If you were born with a uterus and ovaries, it's coming for us. I do believe it is a catalyst for a lot of important things for women, and I definitely don't think it's a stopping point.
Kacy Fleming, an award-winning workplace well-being strategist with over 2 decades of experience advising Fortune 500 companies. She's the founder of the Fuchsia Tent, a digital platform that uses expert-led education and community to elevate the menopause conversation.
It's so important that we have conversation at this pivotal moment that is menopause.
You've spent years helping organizations build better systems for people. Yet, when you faced perimenopause, the system failed you.
When I started having these strange feelings of depression, loss of joy, I had no idea what was going on, and no one was talking about it. I spent 500 hours researching for myself. I knew something had to be done and focusing on midlife women.
Most companies aren't even saying the word menopause.
3 things that women in the workplace want, and those 3 things change everything.
Expert care for menopause and sexual health, now just a click away. Virtual Care by Her MD offers longer visits, personalized treatment plans, and trusted providers, all from the comfort of home. Learn more at hermd.com. This episode was sponsored by Her MD.
All right, let's get into it, girl.
Let's do it.
You've spent years helping organizations build better systems for people. Yet, when you personally faced perimenopause, the system failed you. Can you walk us through how that moment or series of moments led to founding the Fuchsia Tent?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like so many women, right? You hit this mid 40, early 40 kind of stage, and you're really hitting your stride. You are, likely in the career that you always wanted to be in. That was the case for me. I had finally, after 8 years of kind of doing 2 jobs at the same time, one as a marketing head, and 2 as, number 2 in well-being, working to be, number 1 at well-being in an organization. And here I was in this job that I'd worked for 8 years, married to a man I loved after going through a divorce prior, in a beautiful home where I had everything I ever wanted, and I started to feel miserable. And not in a way I could ever identify before. It was almost catatonia. It was sitting on a couch. It was staring into space. It was looking in the mirror and not recognizing the woman that I saw looking out at me. It was irritability with my partner and at work, to a point where I couldn't deal with the corporate stuff that I had been dealing with for so many years. And I feel like so many women are there. I didn't have children to complicate it, like many others do. Of course, I do have aging parents who are healthy, knock wood. But there were all those complexities. And so when I started having these new to me and strange feelings of depression, loss of joy, dysmorphia, and kind of how I looked and felt, I had no idea what was going on, and no one was talking about it. This was like 6-7 years ago when this first started, and I thought I was losing my mind. I mean, I really was so certain that I needed to be committed. I was so certain that I was going to harm myself physically, which is something I've never considered in my life. And, I couldn't tolerate my partner, and yet I knew there were no reasons for me to feel that way. I tell that story all the time. Like I thought he was attractive. I loved him, but I couldn't connect. And one day I remember sitting with him and saying, like, I can't find what I need at work. All of the well-being practices I've been teaching people for years aren't working. Nothing's working. Like dieting's not working. Exercise isn't working. I'm broken for good. You should just leave me, because that's what's best for you. And he said, you know what, let's call our doctor. We have a good internist. I'm very fortunate. I'm one of the few people that has this story. But when I called him and I said, Dr. Goldman, you need to commit me. I've lost it. I'm going to harm myself. I don't know what's wrong. He smiled at me, and his wife was going through this at the exact same time. And he said,
Thank God for that. So
exactly.
That he was able to personally experience it. Not that he wouldn't, because most doctors I know want to do the right thing. They just don't have the
Totally.
education, right?
Totally. And he looked at me and he said, I think you're in perimenopause. And that was the first time I'd heard the word. And
And your first doctor?
yeah, I got it right on the first time.
That,
But
Kacy, I don't think in 2 decades, honestly, I think you just broke my virginity when it came to that story. Like, honestly. And I know that's going to make the highlight reel, but I'm serious. I've yet to hear a woman say somebody said that at their first visit.
well, and I also wore my hot pink pleather for this moment because we're on Disrupt Her. So I felt like I needed to be in my power when I took your virginity away with my story of the doctor that knew what was wrong with me.
I know my virgin years. I don't think I can handle this because usually Oprah even went to like 8 or 9. So, Kacy, good for you. And kudos to that doctor who was not an OBGYN, which I've been screaming from the rooftops, who took the time to understand whether it was because of a personal experience, because of his wife or because he had heard so many patients like you struggling. But I'm like, kudos to your physician.
And I want to caveat with him too that he is a concierge doctor. He had more time to spend with his patients than the
Yes.
average doctor. So he definitely had the time, right? And I had the good fortune of, having worked and being able to afford that kind of care. And medical care has been very important to me. But it was shocking to me that he knew. And what was more shocking was that well, we'll get into the story of kind of the diagnosis and all of that. But I think the important thing, kind of the question that you were asking is, as soon as I heard the word perimenopause, I was like, okay, how do I not know this? I spent 22 years in biopharma. I've read every clinical paper on the planet for oncology, for diabetes, to work with these products. How do I not know? My dad was a doctor. I have a mom still alive. Like, why did nobody tell me that this
Well, Kacy,
could
let me stop
happen?
you there. All those articles that you read, who were the studies performed on?
Totally, men. Right.
Right? Who don't
100%.
go through perimenopause. They have andropause, absolutely, whether it's
Yes.
naturally or through cancers they go through or treatments. So they absolutely have testosterone decline and do struggle like women do, but there was no data. Where you're talking 6, 7 years ago, it wasn't there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so, I took to Google, I looked at everything. Of course, I was hit with kind of, you need this supplement with this cute name, you need this thing with that cute name, you don't want to take hormones, you do. So I went through the process I think so many people went through. And in doing that, because I am a researcher by trade and organizational psychologist, because my brain loves data, I spent probably 500 hours researching for myself. And I said, okay, here's the deal. I'm building grids. I'm doing all this stuff for me. And then that is what happened. And that kind of became the Fuchsia Tent. Was I was like, there's a better way, right? Like, even though there are wonderful doctors like yourself, like my doctor out there that want to help women through this, there are not enough doctors right now to help us all through this. And so as somebody who understood reimbursement and understood pharmaceuticals and understood the hurdles that people are up against in this healthcare system, I was like, there's got to be a better widget. And at the same time, I needed a vivid, not dying, not going out to pasture refuge where I could go and figure out who I am now. Like, I'm no longer this version of me. I love her. There are parts of her still there, but I'm this new version. And in becoming, I couldn't be around my partner all the time. I couldn't be around family all the time. I didn't have the energy. And so I
Wasn't
remember
there a freedom in that, though, of letting
yes.
go of what no longer was and embracing like this new, exciting future? That's what happened to me. And I want to stop you for a second because you said so many important things. The first thing is women always self blame, right? Like you said, I want to be committed. Like, what is wrong with me? You had a medical issue, a massive drop in your estrogen and your testosterone levels. Dr. Mary Claire Haver calls it the zone of chaos. Your hormones are up one down, down another. There are medical treatments. We know that it affects us from head to toe, whether it's mood, sleep, libido. I have so many women who take hormones just so they can work and function. In this country, we lost almost $2 billion in work-related losses because of undertreated, undiagnosed menopause. 900,000 women in the UK just left the workforce and said, forget it. I don't want to pee on myself. I don't want to have brain fog. And then the other thing that you said is I've seen so many marriages break up because women can't either or stand to be around their partner, or they're irritable, or they get mad about things they didn't, or they don't want to have sex, or it hurts to have sex, or they get a UTI the day after sex. And their partners don't know what's going on because no one's explained it to them. And so then marriages break up. And that's why I've fought, with the FDA and for data and for things to be covered. Because if I hear one more time, well, it's not going to kill her, you commented on self-harm. It may kill her. And so many treatments and drugs and things that we offer are about longevity and quality of life. So why, when it comes to women, do we set the bar at, well, is it going to kill her or not kill her? Okay, so you just said so much, and I wanted people to lock onto that. And someone like you, who had already been an advocate, who had all of this understanding, was yet still struggling and self-blaming. And then the other thing that you said, which I hear all the time when I see women for sexual dysfunction or problems with low libido or desire, is I swear I love them. I love my partner. And almost like they feel like I'm going to start blaming them or say, well, it's the relationship. And that just makes me so sad that in 2025, that's still going on. Okay, so here you were, you got this diagnosis, you started Googling, it started making sense. And then what were you going to do at this point what was your aha moment to start the Fuchsia Tent?
Yeah, I mean, I had been through corporate for 22 years. I always wanted to found. I knew I always wanted to do something. And it was that moment when kind of well-being was shifting in the workplace, where I was really seeing that it was going to require massive cultural change to get this right. And not one person kind of heading well-being, sitting in an organization, trying to fix this for everybody. And it was time. And so I knew I needed this refuge that I talked about, this expert advice, somebody to tell me what was, garbage and what was real, somebody who knew. I wanted to help workplaces and women kind of work together and thrive together through the stage. And this became the Fuchsia Tent. So what started with 500 hours of research and an Excel grid, like I'm learning most founders start with the Excel grid from hell that's like 87,000 lines long, and you don't know what your business is, but you have an Excel grid. And then I started kind of curating them into expert resources. I had them vetted. And I was like, okay. And everyone was like, what's your monetization strategy? And I was like, I don't have one. I'm just going to put this out there so that women have a better widget than I did. I want them to have something better, and then I'll figure it out, which I don't know that that's a great business strategy. And I don't know that I'd start a pitch conversation if I were looking for funding with that. But that's the truth. The truth is, I knew it was time for me to leave. I knew something had to be done. I knew I wasn't a doctor. And so it wasn't going to be prescribing care or getting into the conversation there. It was taking what I knew, what I had done for so many years for 170,000 different individuals at 2 pharma companies in the well-being space, and really focusing on midlife women.
And so the other thing that you said, and it always kills me when people are like, oh, but I'm not a doctor. I'm like, it's going to take all of us.
Yes.
Education, people who love education, advocates, pharma, researchers, providers, celebrities, companies, investors, human beings, just all of us collectively, unfortunately, because the gender gap is just so huge right now. I see great momentum with things like, that you're doing, but it's going to take all of us collectively, not just, the providers. We are all one piece of this huge movement that we're seeing. And so it sounds like, and by the way, Excel spreadsheets, I'm allergic to them. They kind of hate me. I hate them. So my founding story, people always think it's this magical thing, was a notebook. And it was a particularly horrific day where I felt like a failure as a doctor. and as a mom, and as a wife, because I was seeing 50 patients, I wasn't making a difference. My mom had almost died at 45, and I had made a promise that I was going to be an advocate. I didn't have time to pee, let alone be an advocate. So I literally sat there and wrote, I initially called it the escape plan. It's like, how can I escape this broken healthcare system and really make a difference? Like the difference I promised my mom, the difference I promised myself, and the difference I owed my patients. And I wrote down, the plan, the business plan, and 3 words. My goal was to educate, advocate, and empower. And I was going to build a practice that was provider and patient centric. And so that I didn't have a fancy Excel spreadsheet. My co-founder, who you've met, later helped me formulate that into a very beautiful, concise pitch deck, and we were able to fundraise. But mine was a notebook, and you know what? I'm cheesy. I'm sentimental. I still have that notebook, and my husband's like, "Are you ever going to get rid of it?" I'm like, "No. One day we're going to frame it." It's like this ratty old notebook, my escape plan. But so the Fuchsia Tent feels like a hybrid of expert resources and shared lived experiences. So what kind of stories and voices are you trying to amplify through your platform?
Yeah, I think that it's so important that we have this conversation at this pivotal moment, kind of in the movement that is menopause, because it is not a monolith. It is not a one size fits all. I think we all know, if we know one woman's menopause, one woman's menopause, right? And in that, it's not just about women. It's about people born with uterus and ovaries, however you identify, and the spectrum, the full spectrum of experiences of Black and brown women, of white women, of, women from all over the world, and people that identify, right, or were born with uterus and ovaries. And it is super critical to me that when we talk about menopause, everybody is in this conversation and everybody's at the table. So, for instance, one of the things that we did in the Fuchsia Tent recently was we did primary ovarian insufficiency Big 10 event. So I started with something that was kind of a closed community, and within that, I realized how important a lot of the experts that I bring in, how their advice is, and I wanted all women to have access to that. So I started doing, once monthly kind of big tent events where I'll have a speaker on a topic that I don't hear being covered as often, or I want to try and cover it in a different way, so that someone that's not feeling heard feels heard. And then we do an event. And so this last month we did primary ovarian insufficiency, premature and early menopause.
Yeah. So, Kacy, I'm going to stop you right there because a lot of our listeners are not doctors or providers or as in the know. So primary ovarian insufficiency, a horrible moniker for it. I worked with the Peanut campaign to get rid of this name, was premature ovarian failure. Like that's just mean. But it's, the average age of menopause in the United States is 51. These patients and individuals go through menopause usually under 40. And it leads them to obviously having symptoms much younger than their peers, but also fertility struggles, particularly if they weren't planning on having families until later. And then because of we're living longer, the prolonged lifespan, but deprivation of estrogen, they're at increased risk for osteoporosis, or fractures. And so not a lot of attention. I think you're my first guest to ever talk about this topic, but I feel like it's a very underserved, invisible population. So that's what it means for all of you who don't know what it is.
Yeah, and so what led us to that is we actually have a member who is in the Fuchsia Tent who has had primary ovarian insufficiency, and was diagnosed at 35. And so she and I started talking about all of the groups that she was in, all of the different support information that was out there. And I felt moved to talk about it because, in addition, like you said, to primary ovarian insufficiency, which is 1% of the population, up to 5% can go into an earlier menopause. So before 45, which also same thing as you said, they require estrogen and progesterone sooner, unless, I'm not going to get into all the medical difficult. That's your area. But I think that was so important for us to do because I haven't heard that conversation, and I wanted to make sure that that group had an educated conversation where we had an expert physician, Dr. Gila Senemar came on. We had an expert reproductive mental health. And I didn't even know that existed. Like, even being an organizational psychologist, I didn't know that there were mental health professionals that specifically worked in reproductive mental health. And Dr. Lori Johnson came on, and then Alejandra, she shared her story. And it was incredible. I think the other thing we really focus on is when I was looking to put together the inaugural advisory board, which we just did. I was very deliberate about putting 3 full generations on there. I wanted people that were nowhere near menopause on there, all the way to people who, were postmenopausal, and, made sure that every different group of people felt like there was representation so that they weren't hearing my voice, which I think so often, being a white woman, this is the voice in the face of menopause often, and there is no voice in face of menopause. It is something that affects all of us. It doesn't matter what you look like or how you identify. Yep. If you were born with a uterus and ovaries, it's coming for us at some point. And
if we're lucky, that's how Correct. I want to reframe it, right? If you get to live long enough on this earth, you will go through menopause. And so we need to reframe that, right?
I love that. I love that. I do believe it is a catalyst for a lot of really important things for women. And I definitely don't think it's a stopping point, but I love the way you reframed that. That's 100%.
My dad's a veterinarian and I love animals. And at one point I thought I was going to be a marine biologist, but we see this, I think in elephants and whales, like the grandmother effect, where the older, wiser, seasoned members of the group, I don't know what all the groups are called in animals again, but they're actually revered and respected, and they are respected for the wisdom, and I think that emotional stability that Lisa Mosconi says we're going to go through after the perimenopausal and menopause, change. And so I think we really need to embrace it. And so you have been featured everywhere, from TEDx to Thrive Global. And when you take these stages, I guess, what is the one core message that you hope that people take away about women, work, and midlife? Like, what's the one, core message you want people to walk away from and feel good about?
I think about this all the time, and it's been so true in my life, and I believe it's true for everybody, that we are really a string of choices away from the life that we want. And the fuchsia thread, if you will, I'm not going to say the red thread, the fuchsia thread through all 3 of those things for me is I want to inspire people to understand that you are not stuck. Wherever you are, however stuck you feel, however beaten down and bore out, or any of those things that you have been feeling, it is a goal and a series of small daily actions towards that goal that are going to get you there. And I think when I talk about a lot of these things, what I've learned from my coaches and what I tell people that I coach is stop always looking ahead, right? Like stop this never enough, too much, I'm never going to get there. When you look ahead, the mountain is steep. Every once in a while, look behind you at everything that brought you to this exact moment where you are, and then believe that you can do anything you put your mind to by taking small daily actions. So it's really this human autonomy choice message for me that is really important to women as they experience menopause, is this empowerment stage, this wisdom stage, this catalyst for everything you ever wanted to be. Of course, once you get your symptoms and care under control and you're not, raging and ready to burn your house down. We got to get past that first. And then we've got
forgetting why you walked into a room, or leave your phone in the, refrigerator, or
totally
have to go to the bathroom every 10 minutes. Like, But people can thrive. I see women at their happiest once they have figured out their treatment regimen and they're thriving. Because, like you said, financial security, children are usually out of the house. You're figuring out where you are in your relationship. And so you can make this the most beautiful phase of your life. You can.
That's right. That's right.
We're going to do some rapid fire questions, okay? Because I watched this video of you over the weekend and talking about burnout. And I don't know about you, but I am definitely the biggest extroverted introvert. And so I need my time to,
Yes.
do the things that fill my bucket. But what is your favorite way to unplug after,
Yes.
you feel overwhelmed? What do you love to do?
Yeah, I've got two, but I'll go with number one, which is fiction. I am an avid fiction reader. I think there's not enough fiction in our life. There's far too much like nonfiction going on. So my favorite thing is to sit with my two dogs, Otto and Finn, and you probably saw Otto kind of like walk back through here. He's been cordoned to the floor, but somehow he found a way up on the pillows. So I love to like kick back, grab a great fiction book and just read and read and read. And that's a great way for my brain to unwind.
Love that because I'm an avid reader too. Some weeks more than others, but it just depends. And because I'm a
Totally.
chronic insomniac, I know you work in menopause in the workplace, and so what's one policy? Just one. I mean, there's so many that need to happen that every workplace should adopt tomorrow.
It's not so much a straight up policy, but it's some form of autonomy and when, where, and or how we work, right? And this was the message of my thesis. This is what I'm always talking about. Human beings need autonomy. End of story. We know from the research absolutely that if you are given some form of autonomy, you are going to be more engaged. You're going to have job satisfaction. You're going to have better well-being, and then you're going to be more productive for the organization. And why companies can't wrap their heads around what 32 peer-reviewed journal studies said and what we learned from the COVID, the terrible COVID experiment that we had, was really that, look, I get it. Not everybody can work from home, but if you have people that have to wear uniforms, give them some autonomy in what they put on if they're going through menopause so that they're not, frying in polyester, right? You give them some autonomy and when they come in and when they leave. That is going to help somebody who is a chronic insomniac, whether it's for menopause or just by nature, work when they're at their best, right? Like autonomy is just allowing for people to say, I'm an adult. I know my job. I know my responsibilities. And I am going to choose to work this way, but that's how I'm going to get this job done. And I think what's interesting to me is we managed to the 20%. We managed to the lowest common denominator everywhere in the world. It's like if 20% are always going to slack off, it doesn't matter what you do. Like
No matter what you do,
they're always going to take advantage because that's just the way humanity is. But we should stop punishing the 80% who are going to DYJ, as one of my mentors say, do your job and get it done. It doesn't matter how you do it. It matters the outcome, right? So it's really some monicum of autonomy and when we're or how we work.
So I love what you said about autonomy because that actually goes back to my origin story about the color red. Like, yes, it supports, women's cardiovascular health. But for me, I went to parochial school, K through 12. And so we had very strict uniform policy, except for our shoes. Like we didn't have to wear those saddle shoes or those penny loafers.
Thank
or
goodness.
Sabagos or Sebagos, however you say them. We could wear whatever shoes we wanted that were comfortable. So my mom went to Denmark and brought me home this beautiful pair of red leather shoes. And after that, I could not have enough red in my life. My first car was red. I think every time you see me, I'm in red. And so that autonomy, because that was the one thing that I could pick. Even my sweaters had to be gray, white, or blue, right? My skirt was plaid. My shirt was white. But shoes, that's what I was allowed to do. And we weren't allowed to have jewelry either, like big, heavy jewelry or do anything like that. So I love that. That's how my origin story of red came around. Kacy, hang on 1 second. Brian, I'm already flashing. Do I only have 30 minutes today?
You can do up to an hour. You've just been doing 30.
Okay, so can you give me another 15?
Yeah, sure.
please. Sorry, Kacy. I
You're
was like,
good.
it's flashing. I'm like, I can't get through the rest.
Here, actually, here's what I'll do. I'll have it up.
Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
just how much you.
Perfect. Thank
Yeah,
you.
of course.
All right. Kacy, you good?
I'm good. I'm with you. I have all the way through 11 block for you, so I'm good.
So when your dog started moving in the background, and if they put this on, I have a really funny story to tell you. So Kamel and I had just come home from an event, and her son was maybe like 8 years old at the time. So the dog was not yet fixed and decided to make friends with the pillow. Okay.
Oh, God.
And was positioning the pillow and moving the pillow around. And I was slap happy because, you know, when you've been at an event for like, we had been in the city for like 12 hours. So I just start cracking up. And so my brother-in-law comes into the room and her son is like, what is Sally doing to the pillow? And he's like, he's just moving it. And I lost it. She's just moving it. And I laughed so hard. I started crying. And Kamel looks at him and is like, why would you say that? You know what we do for a living. And he's like, well, do you two want to talk to him about it? I was like, I've been on stage all day.
You're like, I'm good.
I'm good. I've done enough education about sexual health. But as I saw your dog walking across, I'm like, are we going to have a moment? Am I going to have to be like, Kacy, there's something going on?
He's 10, so
He's
their
good.
their dominating behaviors have slowed quite a lot. He usually, like, I took his stairs away so he couldn't get up there, but I had warned James that there was probably going to be an auto sighting because I could tell he was not happy with his Tempur-Pedic on the floor.
We're dog lovers, so and animal lovers, obviously. So most companies aren't even saying the word menopause. You know, I was told just a few years ago I couldn't even say it on TV, and I was supposed to be talking about that subject.
So fun.
So I was supposed to like dance all around it, let alone building support systems around it. What are the first steps leaders and organizations can really do to change that? Let's just the word even, you know?
Yeah, I think there are three things that women in the workplace want, and this is based on a lot of data collection and research, right? Which is, I call it the 3H framework of the Fuchsia Tent. They want healthcare, and that is in the form of whatever benefit the company can afford. If the company can afford a big box telehealth, great. If the company can't add on an insurance benefit, there's great resources like the Fuchsia Tent. Bring us in to educate, right? It's affordable in a different way. But they want that healthcare. That's H number one. Number two, they want help. And when I talk about help, I talk about it in the form of compassionate leadership, because there are a lot of conversations around talking about menopause in the workplace, but we're not quite there yet. And a lot of women don't want to, right? And they shouldn't have to. We don't ask people to disclose anything else going on with them. Yes, it's a life stage and it's not a disease, so it's not directly covered by ADA in that way. There are facets of it that are, but they want to be able to have a dialogue with somebody and find out what resources the company has for them. That's that help component. And the third component is HRT access information. So choice is up to you, whether you take them or not, but these are generic medications for the most part that are pennies on the dollar that radically can improve the quality of someone's life. And many companies either don't have them on formulary or don't have any access to any information or anybody that can speak about hormone replacement therapy or is willing to. So I always say the first step for organizations is awareness, but what your people want, what they're telling us they want is healthcare, help, and hormone replacement therapy access. Those three things change everything for women, and they don't want to have in the most part a conversation with their leader who likely be male about hormone replacement therapy. And we should not expect these leaders to be experts in this. This is not what they went to school for, right? But they should know what resources the company has, and the company should have resources, and that's where the rubber meets the road.
When we're graduating, less than, 93% of medical residents graduate not feeling comfortable about treating patients in menopause. I think we're a long way away from expecting our industry experts or, corporate to be experts in healthcare. And I want to talk a little bit more about hormone therapy. It's an absolute individualized choice, but what I want is to women to make choices about hormone therapy based on the data of today, not the myths of yesteryear. And not only does it help all those symptoms that you were talking about, but the invisible symptoms as well, like cardiovascular protection and bone protection. And it also helps with cognitive function and renders longevity. People tend to feel better and live longer when they're on hormone therapy. We even know from the first data set that women were less likely to get cancer on the estrogen only arm. And even if they got cancers, less likely to die from those cancers. We just didn't amplify that message. And so we have so much work to do for all of the wrongs and all of the gatekeeping that has happened. So you talked about it when I asked you about what we could do in the workplace or what leaders can take. So imagine a workplace that truly supports women at midlife. What does it look like and how long does it take to build it?
I mean, I think that really depends on the size of the organization, the how long component, right? It's how old is the organization, how much inertia do we have to overcome, right? If you have an organization that's been around for 240 years versus an organization that's brand new on the ground, you have a lot less kind of cultures and mores built into the system. But I think to get the ball rolling can happen really quickly. I think we start with awareness, and that is what removes the stigma. It's not making people menopause experts. It is awareness, which means you bring in speakers, you bring in the conversation, you bring in a speaker who knows the organizational psychology space with a physician, and you have a discussion, and you don't just invite midlife women. I think where we are right now is that, and I'm grateful for it, but when I get brought in, so often the room is like 99% women who are going through
Mm-hmm.
this. And listen, I agree with you. Men want to be our allies. They just don't know what to do. And quite frankly, they're terrified to say the wrong thing. And we're not in a working environment where you can say the wrong thing. And so getting everybody into that awareness piece, that's really what starts to remove the stigma. And then we can go deeper and we can educate on specific topics. We can get much more into, what benefits should companies have? What is the ROI for companies? We know that for every dollar spent, $3 or $4 in reduced healthcare costs returns to the company. And a lot of that has to do with what you talked about, which is I saw one doctor, but most people are seeing 6 to 8 doctors before
Mm-hmm.
they understand what's going on with them. And then at that point, you have multiple organ systems kind of engaged in this symptomatic profile of a perimenopausal
Right.
woman that you may be seeing multiple specialists too, which racks up those healthcare costs. So it's those two pieces. Listen, I used to talk a lot about mastery. For me, mastery in an organization is having a clear understanding of compassionate leadership, which is much easier than it sounds, and it doesn't mean being kind. That really comes down to three things. It comes down to asking someone how they're really doing and listening without judgment, which is the hardest thing in the world to do because we definitely don't know the lived experience of another human being. And then clarifying rather than assuming, like, let's not decide that somebody's behavior is one way or another because we're witnessing it and we have a
Mm-hmm.
story about that behavior. And then let's offer them what good support looks like for them by asking the question, asking the Brene Brown, I call it like the $50 million question. Just ask somebody, what does support for me look like for you? It is that easy. What does support from me look like for you? Not what do I think you need? Not
Yes.
let me pick out a solution for you. Not I have to be an expert in 97 things now to lead. None of those things. It's tell me what you need from me. Tell me how I can help you. You may or may not be able to offer that thing, but you can offer something. And that is where the rubber meets the road.
I love it because that's the way I approached medicine. I'm like, you are a partner. You are actually the CEO, and I'm your partner in healthcare. And it's mutual decision making to come up with a curated plan for you, whether it's hormone, whether it's a direct to consumer, whether it's counseling, whatever you need, medication, procedure. Let's figure it out together after we look at the data. You also commented on how menopause affects so much more than the woman because she is somebody's mother, she is somebody's employee or boss, she is somebody's sister. And so it affects the whole family and the workplace. So I think that's why it's so important. And we're losing really good employees and leaders in the prime of their lives if we're not addressing those menopausal symptoms. And my dream is to have, we have lactation rooms. My dream would be to have bathrooms that are accessible for women on every floor because, some of those older buildings, they don't have that. And genitourinary syndrome of menopause, one of the things is you have frequency and you can't hold your bladder as long. And I know women who have quit their jobs over a bathroom situation, but probably never told their boss. We don't have cooling rooms. Think about it. We have lactation rooms, which I love and they're needed. But what about a cooling room where somewhere where even if you can't fix the AC, you have fans, and while someone's hot flashing, you can go down there and kind of regulate your temperature. I was doing college tours with my daughter, and they now have meditation rooms and rooms for kids to de-stress and kind of like center themselves. And so I'm like, it wouldn't be that hard to set up a cooling room. And then I would love, it doesn't even have to be that fancy. It has to be HIPAA compliant. But a cubicle or a small room that's private where you could take your telehealth appointment. Think about it. You could access care if that's the way you want to go, and you wouldn't have to leave work, and it wouldn't render those delays in care because that's what's happening when we don't partner with employees. We're actually adding another obstacle to care by rendering delays. And so, all right, friend, by listening to you today and painting this place fuchsia, I gave in on my red today for you, although I did wear red. I'm hearing we need to listen to employees and their stories, and we need to act on them. We need to completely normalize midlife. So I think that's perimenopause and menopause conversations both in the workplace and outside of the workplace so that everyone else around can lock on and understand. And we need to really utilize platforms like the Fuchsia Tent to supplement formal support with community care and healthcare. And so I thank you so much for being a fellow disruptor. And I want to ask you and let the audience know how they can follow you, find you, see what you're up to, and what you're disrupting next.
Excellent. Well, thank you for having me here. It's an honor, and your patients are so lucky to have you. And I know all the physicians that you share information with, through your academy and stuff. It's so helpful to creating a better world for women. So thank you for having me here to talk about disruption. You can find me at kacyfleming.com. That is my corporate website. So that's my well-being hat. Thefuchsiatent.com, and I'm going to spell it just because it's Fuchsia. It becomes a joke because I'm like, what? I picked the color because it means vivid and vibrant, which is what I wanted menopause to feel like, but it's so damn hard to spell that people are like, I can't find your Instagram. I'm like, I'm standing right here telling you what it is. You're literally looking at it. Just spell it the way it is. So thefuchsiatent.com. You can find me at the Fuchsia Tent, spelled the same way, on Instagram, or at KCA, just the initials, _Fleming on Instagram, and then LinkedIn, Kacy Fleming, MA. And next, my disruptive path will take me really deep into workplace. I've been doing some work with Let's Talk Menopause and doing workplace conversations. Obviously, I have my own business where I'm going into workplaces frequently and having the conversation around thriving through the menopausal transition. And for me, my mission now is helping women see menopause as a catalyst for their next greatest chapter. Let's get you the care you need. Let's, get you thinking about what you want to create moving forward, and let's do it step by step together. So I'm hoping to really catalyze menopause for change, for good, for whatever women want or whatever's next.
I love that so much. And I'm going to encourage all of the listeners to not accept the status quo, to smash it, and to continue to disrupt in your own lives. Thank you all.
Thank you.